Now, there's one thing that the global elites and the financial elites of the world have really never wanted us to know. And that's that we were about to be hit with massive inflation that very well could wipe out the middle class and the lower classes entirely. And it's beginning to show itself now here. We've even had the Warren Buffett talk about it. And my guest today is Mark Gonzales. Mark is from First National Bullion. To get in touch with Mark for gold, for silver, have a conversation about preparing for what's taking place financially. The link is right there down to First National Bullion, where you can reach out for gold and silver. Make sure you hit the like button on this video right over there and right over there to send this out into the YouTube universe so more people see this video. We're going to be discussing inflation, monetary debasement, how this fits into the currency reset, how to protect yourself, more importantly. And so make sure you give us a comment down below that says Mark Rules right there down below, and give us your prediction of where the dollar is going to be at the end of 2021. And be sure to check out First National Bullion in the description and comments for gold and silver. And it's good to see you, Mark.
Hey, Jake, how you doing, man? Looking awesome. What happened to the hair, buddy?
It fell off last night. Like 10 inches fell off last night while I was asleep. I don't know.
That sounds good.
All right. So let me ask you this question. All right. This conversation about inflation and all this money printing, is it going to be bad for us? For the longest time, it's been a more fringe subject. Even people like Warren Buffett, I believe he referred to people that thought that the Fed and government policies and this easy money policy, inflation kooks, I believe was a term that he had used before. And even he's now saying it. Give us an idea of what you're thinking about what's taking place right now. We're seeing lumber, everything going up, and, just normal people that are everyday people that do not care about the financial system like you and I do. I have them telling me they're seeing prices increase.
Well, you're absolutely right. And this is where it's starting to hit home with the debasement of the dollar, as is the status quo for all reserve currencies. You create something out of nothing with interest remaining. It's the mathematical certainty. So inflation is not rising prices. A lot of people look at it as rising prices. That is the symptom of it. Inflation is actually the debasement of currency, which we are doing and have been doing for a very, very long time. The price rise is the symptom. An example of that is anybody that's gone to the grocery store, buys fruits, vegetables, anything it is. It could be a banana. Let's say 1 year that banana cost $1, right? The next year that banana costs $5. It doesn't mean that banana is any better from 1 year to the next. What it means is the amount of money circulating, right? Another example to kind of resonate to people is, let's say you got 10 people on stranded on a deserted island, and one of them has a mango. Well, the guy or gal to the left of that person pulls out $1 and says, "Hey, I'll buy that." But before that transaction takes place, then you have someone on the other side of the, sitting on the other side of them, and they pull out $10. Okay, well, guess what? Now it's $10, and it doesn't mean that it's a better mango. This scales in a massive, massive way. And when you're coming in a production shortage due to COVID, it's going to get out of control. It absolutely is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The CPI number came in so incredibly hot a week ago at 4.2% year over year rise. Mind blowing. That is the biggest increase in 13 years, right? Now, this is following on the heels of a year of trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. That's going to come home to roost. And what we'll dive into today a little bit, and we'll take as much time or wrap it up as quickly as we need to. We're going to talk a little bit about how the measure of inflation comes to be, because if people can really kind of get a grasp on that, then they can prepare a plan and they get a better idea of what's coming. but 100%. Go to the grocery store. Inflation's here. It's not stopping.
Yeah. So the CPI that you talked about. So let's break this down, right? Why should we care about this at all? So you said CPI is rising. First of all, let's talk, as you said, what does this really consist of and why is it relevant? Because I had a guest on, David Garofalo, yesterday, very successful guy. He was the CEO of Gold Corp when they merged with Newmont and sold for, 60 something billion. A very smart guy. He says he thinks the real inflation is over 10%.
I agree.
And so give me a breakdown. And why should we care?
Well, you should care because it's the expectation of what you need a budget going forward. But CPI is essentially the measure of debasement of your money. So if the Fed says that CPI wants to burn or inflation, they want to keep inflation at 2%, essentially what they're saying is they're going to steal 2% of your wealth year over year. That's essentially what they're doing. Now, they massage these numbers astronomically low from what they actually are. And I agree with what you said. Inflation's over 10 if you back out all the adjustments. And the reason these are kept low is because government pensions, social securities, any type of dole out for the government, especially with the coming UBI on a massive scale, universal basic income, the increase of those checks are proportionally to the CPI. So if you can say CPI is 2% when it's really 10, the government's saying money, right? But you're being paid less of the cost of living. So here's how inflation's measured. You got various different components over the past 30 years that have been adjusted into it to lower this number. And you can only finesse math to a certain point. So you have subtraction, you have substitution, you have weighting, and you have hedonics. So subtraction simply, food and energy are considered too volatile, so they remove them. Simple as that. They're not counted. So you need energy to stay warm in the winter. You got to get your car around and you got to eat. So when you remove some of the lifeblood of what you need to exist, that's an inaccurate number right there in itself. Then you have substitution.
So no food, before you move on, just to confirm, you're saying food and energy are not in CPI?
No.
So the 4.2% is not including it's not including 90% of what your average person actually is spending their money on, which is primarily food and energy and housing.
Exactly, for the most part. Now, there are additional prints to the CPI number and adjustments to include some food and energy, but trust me, they're way understated. Anybody that fills up their gas tank is going to know. I mean, I recently had to go to Wyoming and Colorado and had a rental car, and it was awesome, man. $2.80 in gas. It really was crazy. And then I left my car at San Diego because it's cheaper than getting an Uber nowadays sometimes. And I had to fill up to get home, and I paid $4.60 right around the corner. I mean, it just, talk about shock. So good old California, yay. All right, so we got subtraction in the measure of food and energy. So let's go to substitution. If a price of a commodity or product becomes too high, it is substituted with something else of comparable measure in the eyes of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So what this comes down to, say you're a wealthy individual, all right, or just anybody for that matter, and you can eat filet mignon and lobster as much as you want, right? You got the money to afford it. It's a luxury that you have, and the price of filet mignon and lobster become too high. If you have to substitute those to meet your budget with fish sticks and hot dogs, it's a push. It's not counted. That's pretty insane, but that's how that works. You have these geometric adjustments that have been imputed over time. And there's a side note, there's a really, really interesting guy that I used to follow a lot. And I'm actually thinking about getting another subscription because I haven't had one to his website in a while. And it's John Williams of Shadow Statistics. He's backed out the imputations over time, so you can find out really what the inflation is running at. It's a painstaking job for the guy, I would imagine, but he's done it. He's removed 30 years to see where the actual inflation is. You just got to pay for the subscription. I'm thinking of doing it. So you have another component to CPI, which is waiting. So weigh in your options. Something in your body hurts. You have your knee hurts, your hip hurts, your shoulder hurts, something. Well, you can weigh the options of how much that hurts versus the cost it would actually take to go and pay the medical expense to get it done. If you weigh that you're tolerating the pain or the discomfort as opposed to actually coming out of pocket for it, well, no inflation. So these are very, very base ground roots of how it's calculated, and it goes a little bit deeper than that. But as you can see so far, it's a lie. The price of goods and services obviously are rising higher than what is stated because the government wants to save money and not pay you as much on the increase of living. Now, the monster or mother of all imputations and misleading data points is hedonics. You now have hedonics in the inflationary number of CPI to massage it lower. And this also ties in, which I'll touch on briefly at the end here, with the GDP. So I'm going to do a little visual for you guys. So here we go. Here's a phone, right? Here's an iPhone. This iPhone in 2020, let's say, cost $1,000. And then you got the same iPhone in 2021, it costs $1,000. So if it's $1,000 year over year, there is no cost of goods increase. There is no inflation, right? But the new model, the 2021 model, has a processor that can operate 20% faster. Maybe its screen is 20% brighter. These are benefits that you didn't pay for, but are still benefits nonetheless. So the CPI number will redact the cost of that 1,221 phone by a factor of 0.2. So when it goes on the books for inflation, it's going to go on the books at $800. It's not going to go as 1,000, even though you paid 1,000 for it. That's one of the many ways that they can reduce it. And the services or the benefit, which is really how inflation is geared up to go now. It's not basket of goods year over year. Before, you used to have a basket of goods, let's say you had 20 products, the same product year over year. If it cost $100 one year and 103 the next year, inflation's simple, it's 3%.
So what's the result of this?
Well, as technology increases, and the biggest part of inflation, which is over 60%, is on the service end. That also includes your laptops, your TVs, your iPhones. As these products improve, and sometimes the prices for those improvements are actually coming down. You know, the price of TVs is a lot cheaper for a flat screen now than it was a decade ago, right? And it's a better quality. That's something you didn't pay for. That's a benefit that you can that you have, and that TV, that computer, all these goods and services that we purchase, their price when it goes on the bottom line for inflation is reduced by whatever the imputation or increase in presumed value. The screen's brighter, the processor's brighter, the sound speaker's better. So you're constantly having these new technologies making some of these laptops and TVs more affordable, but yet they're better quality. So it's a double whammy, right? If iPhone from one year to the next is $1,000, but
how is this going to affect us here in 2021? What's going to happen here? We're seeing they're now openly stating it's up to 4%, which is that's a big number even by their own metrics. And now it's becoming a mainstream conversation. I don't have TV at my house, but I went over to my wife's grandma's house yesterday and she turned on the news. Guess what the first thing they talked about as soon as she hit the on button?
Inflation.
Inflation.
I would imagine.
Right away. I was like, whoa, this is really bizarre. Because I had heard that the news was talking about it a lot, but I don't watch the news and I don't have TV. And so as soon as the one time, probably in the last 120 days, I've even seen live news, that was the first thing. Why are they talking about it so much now, whereas before they were keeping the cat in the bag? Don't you think that's a little odd?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, when you have a 4.2 number year over year, you can't hide that.
So they're
I
just
mean,
getting ahead of it.
I mean, yeah, you got to head it, and then you have this temporary, it's not here to stay kind of thing.
So then what
That's
happens next?
it doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. It's going to keep going. This is
Why?
how.
Why won't it stop?
Well, all this currency that we've been producing for decades, especially since '08, and more importantly in the last year, it's coming home to roost. You're going to have the inflation's there. That's the raise in the monetary unit. The symptom of it is the rising prices of goods and services. That is what we're starting to experience. And then now that it's becoming more mainstream and people are starting to, I think, wake up to it. The thing about inflation is not only does it keep a government spending when they give you your paycheck of Social Security, they have to increase that based on the cost of living on their adjusted numbers. So it's saving them money. But at a lower print number, say we're keeping it around 2% when it's really running over 10, the mentality is it's not burning too hot, so people aren't rushing out there to buy goods and services because that kicks up velocity. How many times does a unit change hands? I give you $1 as a tip. You're a waiter. You get put that $1 in your gas tank. That's $2. The guy that owns the gas station uses that $1 with many other dollars, and they buy gum or soda pop. That would be 3 transactions. The higher the velocity, the faster currency is circulating, the higher you're going to get that CPI. And it becomes a self-fulfilling process. Prices rise, so people start to feel I need to go buy it now because tomorrow it may be more money. It once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put it back. You can't put it back. Pandora's box is open. I expect it to increase dramatically because we have decades and decades of these adjusted numbers to serve the government and the government state in their payments, right? And set expectations. But that expectation is gone. And I think the bottom line is people are waking up to distrust what they've been told. And when distrust is there, and I don't know how you feel. I mean, I distrust the information all the time because I know that it's false. But
yeah, I'm a bad barometer though, because my number one rule in life is never believe anything that television or government tells you, whether side they're on the political spectrum. So I'm a bad barometer for that. But it does seem like inflation is a way that actually, regardless of your what side of the political spectrum you find yourself on, it is a way that kind of cuts through the illusion because you're like, why is everything getting so much more expensive? And they're saying it's not that bad. It kind of does spark a little bit of that. You know what I mean?
oh well, absolutely. And this is what is happening now. You have people that are going to the grocery store and they're finding out to feed their family that one was week over week $100 is now 102, 103, 104, 105. So they see this happening. So if they start going to the grocery store, let's say Tuesday or Wednesday, they get the mentality that, hey, if I can beat it instead of going the weekend, maybe I save a couple bucks, right? That creates, in my opinion, a term I use is the hot potato. You don't want to hold a hot potato. You get rid of it as fast as you can. That kicks up velocity. The higher the velocity goes, the higher the prices. And then on the producer end, the ones that actually produce the cereals, the grains, the milks, the car tires, all this stuff, they don't ship as readily to the dealer for consumption. If they believe the prices are going to go up in a week, why wouldn't you hold supply for a week and get more money for it?
So that right? It affects the supply chain.
Exactly. And that also can be attributed to metals as well. You get stuff that goes into the in tight hands, waiting for a higher price to release it that would create a large enough benefit to release it. Creating shortages, creating squeezes, price going up. All going back to our first video, you're going to have hard time getting in a hold of any metal. And on a side note, back to what these stores are doing, our 4 stores, 2 states, is we do have product in house, but again, it's limited. If I place orders for silver, if I don't have it, the average time for majority of the vendors and mints that I deal with is I'm now being told end of August to September. They need to make it. They don't even have it. And when silver jumped up, which silver is up about $2 since the time we last spoke, gold's about $100 up. So we are moving in the right direction. When silver jumped up around 90 cents week and a half, 2 weeks ago, in one day, delivery expectations and orders I placed went from beginning to mid-July to mid-August. Now they're the end of August. Pretty soon they're going to be September. Pretty soon I'm going to pick up the phone and try to place orders, and you're going to find I'll be told first quarter next year, until one day maybe they just don't answer the phones.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that taking. And for everyone listening, you can reach out to Mark right there down below. You'll see First National Bullion in the description right there down below and pinned to the comments, and you can reach out directly to Mark. Now, one of the things that strikes me as interesting is that you're seeing this type of shortages in shipping, and the price is still not, the price action, the sentiment is terrible in gold and silver, right? And crypto took off. Now gold's reapproaching 1870 or so. Silver's reapproaching 30. So you're starting to make a strong move back. And when this thing cracks and gold cracks 2000 and silver cracks 30, and then the psychological buyers come in because the price is moving upwards, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens. You've talked to me for many years in our many sales conversations about how you believe that it will be unobtainable. And I've always kind of been like, yeah, I think that's a good sales angle for Mark. But you start to see it when it's happening now at such low prices. What happens when inflation does pick up and people actually wake up and say, wow, I literally should not be holding my cash anymore. I should just, get some gold and put it in long-term storage, or get some silver and put it in long-term saving storage. When that happens in a bigger way and you get the momentum traders and everything stepping into gold and silver, you might have exactly what you've been predicting for a long time, where it isn't that obtainable due to inflation and the fear of inflation, right?
Oh, 100%. I agree. And that day will come. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And not to say that it'll never be 100% unobtainable. It's just at what price? Right. You have to bribe it out of someone's hands. And to further the point, it's not that the price of gold and silver or the banana or the mango or the car tires is rising. It's the value of what prices it is falling. Gold and silver is historically the best store of value over thousands and thousands of years. Its price rises to mimic the devalued currency that is pricing it. So when your grocery bill goes from $100 every 2 weeks to $200 every 2 weeks, and that now is a potential reality, it's hard for people to get their head around because we've never experienced that in this country, right? But it can easily come. The gold and silver that you have is going to protect your wealth, so you can still afford to live. You can still accommodate yourself. And the problem is by the time most people wake up to realize what is going on around them, and even if they do understand, like they get this sense, like I should buy metal. There's a lot of people I talk to that just aren't convinced. They're still trying to buy a dip. They're still trying to time the market. And you really can't do that when you're dealing with the physical commodity, because even if the price drops, the cost percentage above the mining extraction or the spot price can increase. And that has happened to me. I've seen gold drop $20-$30 in a day, but the cost for me to acquire something on an order standpoint, if gold's down 30, it might cost me 38 more to get it. Right. So that's not in line with, the price of the market of what's being stated. You got to look at the price to acquire this stuff. And until at some point it just becomes out of your reach because you don't have the money to buy it. Now you're not protected in the only asset throughout all recorded history for thousands of years that will match the value of the currency. It's not a good show. And with all this information that is coming out, and now you have all these cryptocurrencies and you got the stock market on fire, unless you really understand the debt market that creates that movement, unless you really understand how they calculate the inflation, how they calculate the GDP, excuse me, then you can't base your assumptions or your expectations accordingly. Right. So I want to touch on something real quick. So we talked about Hydonics with the iPhone, right? Year over year, $1,000, brighter screen. It goes on the books for 800 when it really exchanged at $1,000. Now let's look at GDP, because you got to yin and yang to a lot of these markets. What you take from one, you got to get to the other, kind of like currencies created from credit. So you revalue the credit, you devalue the currency, kind of like that. So let's say that it's a sporting goods store. So let's say you have a national chain of a sporting goods store that has a $10 million bottom line. Pretty weak bottom line for a national chain, but we'll use that example. And that sporting goods store outfits its national locations with an operating or computer system that can operate 20 times or 20% more efficiently, even though it's human input in calculations of monitoring and managing that computer system. If it operates at a 20% better capacity, that $10 million bottom line will be ratcheted up by 0.2. So it'll go on the books of GDP at 12 million instead of 10. But the 2 million never was generated. So it's kind of mind blowing when you actually try to get your head around it. And even talking about it now, because I haven't talked about this in a while, it still catches me off guard. But that's exactly how it is. One number of the cost of living is ratcheted down so governments can spend less on your increased doleouts or entitlements. And you borrow from that and you add to the bottom line of economic output. So essentially, it's all a lie. And then you couple that with the fact that you've got all this trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars spent, and these debt issues are squeezing stocks and they're squeezing real estate, and it at some point that ends. I can't say when it's going to happen, but it's happened to every other country that has been in our situation before, and it's going to hurt simply because we dominate the entire world of repricing. So the dollar has to be revalued down again, in my opinion. I think you get a systematic adjustment of the credit in to devalue the currency. That is also debt forgiveness. You hear a lot of stuff talking about we need to forgive debt. We've touched on this before. That's the mathematical way to do it. You discharge a bankruptcy by devaluing the currency. So I think we have this Pandora box that's been open, and you may get adjustments month over month that people will cheer about. Maybe next month CPI only goes up 1.6%. And that's an improvement. But it's really not. Over a course of a period of time, and it could be a year, it could be 2 years, a family of four that again spends $100 week over week. I mean, that could easily go to 120, 140. And look around. I know a lot of people that were affected by COVID. I know some people that have profited immensely from it too. Not the shutdown, but just with the crypto, with all this stuff that you can do out there. People are hurting. People are absolutely hurting. And with the trajectory that we're on, look at all recorded history, it doesn't stop. People need to prepare for this. And the only way historically to prepare for that is to have gold and silver in your basket of ammunition. If you don't have it, trust me, at some point, you're going to want to know me or the company like me. It doesn't have to be me. That's fine. Call whoever. But at some point, you're really, really going to want it. And people like a moving market. So as soon as this thing really takes off, you got gold and silver that start to take off. Everybody seems to want to notice, right? And that's only going to add fuel to the fire. So again, my assessment is silver goes to its $50 level, and I'm thinking it could easily happen this year, its previous high. But when it gets there, if I'm able to acquire something, you could be looking at a 5, 6, 8 month delay to get the product, if I can even get it, and you're probably going to pay $80 to $90 for it. So why wouldn't someone make it easy on themselves and understand these concepts and take preventative measures now, right? Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. It's as simple as that.
So, do you do you think that they're just where do you think we go from here? Do you think that they just keep pushing along with these infrastructures and stimulus, and um, we just keep seeing next levels of inflation? I don't know how they stop inflation, even if they try to lock people in their houses again during next flu season. Um, because, as you said, the supply shortages have had a big effect. Maybe if there's a recovery on that, but if they do a new round of lockdowns, there's not going to be a recovery on supply shortages. How do you think this plays out here in 2021? Give us some of your predictions.
Well, damage is done, in my opinion. So as far as a prediction, I think I clearly stated it. It doesn't stop. You don't close what is now open. Inflation is here. Again, inflation is not the rising prices. The rising prices is the symptom of what was already done, and that's increase in the money supply. We did it in 2008. We did it in here recently. In fact, the Fed never stopped inflating or increasing the money supply to cover the margin or the shortfall of mortgage-backed securities in the treasuries. Right. So this continues. How do you want to do it? How do you stop it? Right. It's a drug addiction. You cannot back down from here. So the cost of living is going to go up. It's as simple as that. You're going to get higher cost of living. And when that becomes a reality to people, where they kind of wake up and they think, okay, well, hey, hamburgers now, $15 a pound instead of $7, they're going to buy it. And that's going to create even more shortages. And then the producers that sell this stuff, they're going to hold on to the supply as opposed to put it in the market looking for a stronger valuation. And that is going to increase. So you're going to have all this money sloshing around. It's going to try to find a home. And that is where the damage is done, is your inflation of the base money is increased. We're starting now to see the symptoms. Look throughout history. Look at Venezuela. Look at Argentina. Look at Weimar Germany. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at all these different countries. As soon as they passed that corner, it never went back. So does it happen tomorrow? Do we have 20-30% inflation by the end of the year? Who knows? But you said it yourself. The people you're interviewing are talking about 10. I'm going to look up shadow stats, and I'll actually text you what I find out. I'll go do that. I'm willing to bet it's over 10. Right. So if that's the case, if that's the true case, 10% of your wealth every single year, $10 out of every 100 is going to be confiscated. What were you going to say?
What you just said right there about confiscation is because really what's happening is it is a intentional plan to literally steal your wealth. And they pretty much think people are stupid enough to not notice, since it's harder to directly confiscate their money and be like, come to everyone's houses. So this is just, it's essentially what they're doing. It's a confiscation of wealth. They're literally stealing money. Now, would you say this? So is this all the reset? Is this all the reset?
It's the beginning of it. Absolutely. I think if you're going to reset a currency, especially a dominant yield, you want to squeeze all the blood from the current stone, because those who touch the currency and its utility first are the ones that are going to benefit. So that is government, that is large corporations. It is not average people. The average people then go through a devaluation or that confiscation, which is happening year over year. The Fed says they want to target 2%. That means they're stealing 2% of your money every single year. For $100, you lost 2. Next year, you lose another 2. Next year, you lose another 2. Now that accelerates. So, yes, when the dollar does not have enough value to support the economy, that is when you reprice it and you forgive debt through revaluation. That's what I think. So it's here. It's not stopping. You got a little bit of time. I mean, people can actually still acquire metal. They can still make defensive moves. Try to get, maybe agricultural land, try to get, you know, you can do this out of country. I'm actually looking at something like that. Um, there's things you can try to do to protect yourself, but at the same point, a lot of this is going to become out of reach for everybody because their wealth is being confiscated, and that's accelerating very quickly. And unfortunately, by the time people wake up or take action, it's usually when they're at the weakest point. At least that's what I find with human nature. It's very difficult for someone to stand up and make a decision to act when they continuously been told, hey, everything's okay, don't worry about it, we got you. That's again where the trust factor comes in. And when people lose trust in the currency and they spend it quicker, boom, you're done. That's it. It happens. I don't know how fast it happens, but a 4.2% increase, the biggest in 13 years, that is monstrous. That is absolutely monstrous. And all this trillions of dollars that's been printed, it's only a matter of time before that actually circulates into the economy, chasing fewer and fewer goods. So how do you absorb it? It's already out there.
So, for everyone listening, you could reach out to Mark right there down below in the description and in the comments. Give us a comment down below that says Mark Rules if you're enjoying this episode so far. Give us a comment down below for the good old YouTube algorithm. Now, my next question, Mark, is so then what happens to stimulus payments and pensions, people on a fixed salary, if they're buying significantly less? So let's just take pensions and stimulus specifically. But what if 4.2%, that's a huge number for the government. I mean, that means in even, a couple years, you're well over 10 by their metrics. But let's say it's a lot higher than that. And you have $2,000 a month in your pension or $2,000 a month in stimulus, and that's covering your life. But what happens if there's 20% loss of purchasing power through inflation, and you are buying? So do they have to then keep increasing because it's a weird situation you're in where the prices of everything are getting higher and higher, but the economy is getting weaker and weaker, right? Many people call it the invisible crash. And so what happens there? Do they have to keep increasing these payments every 12 months or so to higher levels? And what happens to pensions, people on fixed salaries? What happens in this situation?
Well, as far as fixed instruments, fixed pensions, Social Security, cost of living pay increases, stuff like that, yeah, those rise basically at the CPI level, at least on the government. So if you have a government pension or you have the Social Security and inflation's growing at 2%, 2.5%, your paycheck's going to increase accordingly to that. But the lie of it is if your actual inflation is growing at 10%, but your paycheck's only increasing by 2%, there's a difference of 8%, right? So you're being squeezed. And that is why these numbers have been adjusted so low, is to create the illusion of low inflation. But anybody who goes to the grocery store finds out that that's not true. And the only way that the government at this point, because the government doesn't have any savings, it's all debt. You have a record number. I think you have like 30% of America is living off the government at this point. So government's broke, and when they have to increase their paycheck to you, how are they going to do it? They're just going to continue to borrow. They're going to print more. That's the only way you can do it.
Higher forms of wealth confiscation, whether it's whatever it might be, whether it's higher taxes or more automated ways to get your taxes, or taxing unrealized gains. They'll have to start doing more of that stuff, you would think, too.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're doing it. I mean, we're broke, so it's already going to happen. So let's say IRAs, for an example. Let's say you have an IRA and you pass and you leave it to your kids or whoever. If you inherit an IRA, and this is a law that went into the code, it was written in, I think about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. If someone inherits an IRA, they have 10 years from the date of that inheritance to liquidate the entire IRA. Why? Because many people were inheriting IRAs and they were adding to it and growing this in a tax deferred base. And the IRS or the government wasn't getting their claw back until you had an age of mandatory disbursement. where you were forced to take out X amount every year based on the size of that IRA. So you could enter an IRA in your 40s and you could live to be 80 years old, and you would only have, a few years that you were forced to sell anything of that. So the government wasn't going to get it paid. So look at that. That's one example. Now, if you inherit that, you got 10 years from the jump to liquidate it. And every time you cash out or take a personal benefit from a retirement account, you are taxed. Right. So yeah, you're going to see higher taxes. You're going to find higher ways to squeeze your wealth, probably with capital gains, probably with real estate, probably with inheritance. The glory days are over. I mean, the system is set up now to create speculation or gambling to get ahead. And we're calculating inflation not from baskets of goods to basket of goods, but the imputations and the benefit of 60+% of it being a service aspect. So it's what's the word I'm looking for? I forgot that, but it's forgot the train of thought, guys. I'm sorry about that, but it's not the basket of goods from the year over year. It's a pleasurable benefit at this point. So I forgot how I was going to say that.
So what do you think we see next? Is this a gradual process over 20 years, or is this a process that you see does it pick up year over year?
Oh, it picks up year over year because the imputations of Michael Boskin, he worked under the Clinton administration, and in 95 and 96, he came out with the current way that we structure inflation with the substitution, weighting, and hedonics. So let's touch on again the substitution. This already has been happening. So 95, how long ago was that? Long time ago, right? I was 2 years out of high school, right? I'm going to be 47 now. I mean, that was a while ago. So I remember now what I was going to say. So we're not going from basket of goods to basket of goods. If you look at that substitution example, if you got filet mignon and lobster, but you can't afford that, and that becomes too expensive, so now you're reduced to fish sticks and hot dogs, it's a push. There's no inflation. So we're not calculating this as far as the cost of living. We're basing it in 95, 96. We started basing it just on survival. Does that make sense?
Right. Understood.
And that was 95, 96. It is now 2021. And you have a base to M2, which, by the way, is not even being reported anymore. M3 got canned in 2005 because St. Louis Fed charting system, the Federal Reserve charting system, was growing at a clip of nearly 10% over state inflation at 2%. What? Come on, man. So it doesn't make sense. Can't use that anymore, right? It's shouting that inflation's here. So what do? We shit can it. That was in 2005. The broadest measure of money was canned. And during this pandemic, M2 is now not being updated. They have different data series to complement it because guess what? It's not needed. We can adjust it other ways. So you got M1, which is based on the Fed, which essentially 2008 Fed's balance sheet was $800 billion. So it took almost a century for the Fed to get to $800 billion balance sheet, and now we're well over $8 trillion. So it took us 13 years to go 10x. Composition is happening. It scales from here at a fast pace.
So it's obvious we're starting to see money printing manifest itself as something that is starting to affect our ability to buy things, our savings. And now we're seeing the media and the global elites starting to actually admit it. Like I said, when my grandmother-in-law turned on the news, and that was the first word I heard: inflation. And so if you want to get in touch with Mark, the link is right there down below in the description and pinned to the comments. Make sure you hit the like button on this video right over there or right over there to send this out into the YouTube universe so more people see it. Today, we wanted to break down a little bit more about inflation how we can understand it and potentially be able to see the future and what's arising. And so if this video speaks to you, make sure you give us a comment down below and hit the like button to help the YouTube algorithm out. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe and bell notification. Bell notification is what notifies you for new videos, so be sure you hit that to get notified for the next one on this side or that side. And Mark, where can we find you?
You can find us, as you mentioned, the link down below, First National Bullion. There's a link. You can go there. You can fill out, give me your name, number, email. I'll reach out to you personally. If I get too busy, someone else will. Again, I cannot emphasize enough. You said it yourself. You turn on the TV for the first time and however long, and the first thing you hear is inflation. Now imagine everybody out there that doesn't quite understand precious metals, but is thinking that they need some sort of hedge, and they're hearing that too. And this person's got 100 grand, and that person's got 100 grand, and that person's got 100 grand. If the smallest percentage of people wake up and reach out to me or someone like me, you don't get anything. It's gone. Delivery notices are coming in August to September for silver. This means something, and people need to pay attention. So hit the link below. Like Jake, I like the guy. Fill out information, reach out to us, call us directly. We'll take the time for you. Advice is it's best to be a year early than a second late.
So thank you for watching this video today, and give us a comment down below, and we will be sure to see you next time.